Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a framework for trying to make sense of a world that, let's face it, often feels like it's being pulled in two completely opposite directions at once. So, let's jump right in.
You know how it is. One moment you're seeing these incredible images of national celebrations, people cheering under the biggest, brightest full moon in years. And then, the very next story in your feed is about a catastrophic earthquake or a devastating flood where thousands of people have lost their lives. It's just this dizzying whiplash, a tale of two completely different realities happening at the exact same time.
It just forces you to ask, right? How are we supposed to process that? How do you make any sense of a world that holds so much joy and so much tragedy, sometimes on the very same day? Well, the source material we're looking at today offers a way to think about this very problem.
This whole idea comes from an ancient text, the Book of Hebrews, and it gives us this powerful lens to view all these contradictions. It basically suggests that we're all living in two different realities at the same time, one that it calls the shakeable and the other the unshakable.
And it all kind of hinges on this one really powerful line. The idea here is that everything in our world is being tested, it's being shaken, but not just for the sake of it. There's a purpose, to show us what's truly permanent, what's actually built to last.
Okay, so first up, you've got the shakeable world. This is, well, it's pretty much everything we see and touch and experience every day. Our jobs, our homes, our countries, even the literal ground we walk on. According to this framework, all of that stuff is temporary. It's unstable by its very nature. It's all going to change, decay, and eventually be shaken.
But then, existing right alongside that is the unshakable kingdom. This is described as this eternal spiritual reality, a place of total stability, of permanence, that's completely beyond all the chaos of our physical world. And here's the kicker. The idea is that we are living in both of these worlds, right now, at the same time.
So if we're living in both of these realities, what does that actually mean for us, day to day? Let's take a look at how this whole framework applies to our lives, because the answer it gives really depends on what our circumstances are.
See, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's meant to be a really practical guide for how to live. And it suggests two totally different ways to respond, depending on whether you're going through a tough time or whether you're living in a period of peace and security.
For anyone who's facing a disaster or a loss or just real suffering, the advice is to endure with hope. The source uses this really vivid phrase, to lift drooping hands and weak knees. The whole idea is to anchor yourself in that permanent, unshakable reality, so you can find the strength to get through the temporary, shakeable loss, and to not fall into despair or start cutting ethical corners just because you're desperate.
Okay, that makes sense, right? But here's where this whole framework gets really challenging. What is our responsibility when we're not the ones suffering? What are we supposed to do when we're living in times of peace, comfort, and, things are going pretty well?
And here's a fascinating twist. The source actually argues that prosperity is the greater test. Why? Because comfort can so easily lead to corruption, to a kind of moral laziness. So the mandate isn't just to be grateful for your good luck. It's to actively use your stability to be a blessing to other people. It's a call for a really careful, purposeful, and ethical way of living.
This brings us to probably the most practical part of this whole idea. The source says that people who are in prosperous times are called to pursue holiness. But let's be honest, that's a word that can feel a little abstract, maybe even a bit religious or out of reach. So what does it actually mean to do that?
Let's really break that down. When you hear that word, holiness, what do you think of? For a lot of us, it's something very internal, very private, maybe a spiritual feeling. But the source material we're digging into offers a surprisingly concrete and public definition.
Yeah, it's not about trying to achieve some kind of special spiritual feeling or just going through private rituals. According to this framework, holiness is something you do. It's lived out in tangible, observable, and super practical actions out in your community.
In fact, the source gets incredibly specific. It points back to the ancient text of Leviticus and defines holiness with actions like these: honoring your parents, caring for the poor and the immigrant, specifically by leaving parts of your harvest for them to gather, not stealing or lying, not cheating your neighbor, paying your workers what you owe them and on time, and upholding justice and fairness for everybody. It's all about social and economic integrity.
So when you put all of these pieces together, what you get is a radically different way of approaching life and success, and even how we think about the power of a nation. It really challenges our basic definition of what it means to be strong.
This line right here really sums up the whole critique. True strength, whether it's for a person or a whole country, isn't measured by how well you can protect yourself or how much you can control others. It's measured by your capacity to be a blessing, to be a source of good for other people.
And the source highlights this deep irony in our world today. The wealthiest, most powerful nations are often the ones that need the most extreme security measures. Their leaders travel with the heaviest protection. And that kind of suggests a strength that actually creates fear and threat, not one that brings peace and well-being to others.
At the end of the day, this framework is not a call to just detach from the messy, shakeable world and go meditate somewhere. It's actually the exact opposite. It's a call to engage with this world, but to do it with a completely different set of values that are driven by the stability of that permanent, unshakable reality.
So it all really boils down to this. If you find yourself in a time of hardship, the mandate is to find an enduring hope, to know that this shakeable moment will pass. And if you're in a time of peace, your mandate is to use that gift of stability not just for yourself, but to get to work building a better, more just world for other people.
Which leaves all of us with a final question to really think about. No matter what season you're in, a season of shaking or a season of stability, what is your life building? What are you creating that is truly unshakable?